Welcome to GTK GHS, a student-ran podcast that gives teachers, students, and others a chance to have a sit-down discussion and talk about their lives and classes. Today, I'm joined with Mr. Withrow, an AP teacher here at GHS.
Hello, Mr. Compton.
Hello, Mr. Withrow. All right. Well, give us a brief summary of your life, like, your past jobs, education. I know you were in the military.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I grew up here in Gilmer County. I was a member of the gifted program when I was in elementary school and high school here. One of my favorite teachers was Dr. Hagopian, and he taught history along with a lot of other things. So he kind of inspired me to get out there into the world. And Dr. Hagopian was not from here, and he had a very interesting past, and that really helped me understand that there was more to the world than just here. So I went to college for a while, and then I joined the Army. I stayed in the Army for about 12 years until I was injured. After I got out of the Army, I worked for an international company from Denmark that provided layout design, content management, and ad production software for major newspaper groups around the world. That job was a really good job. We kind of worked ourselves out of a job because the software we produced was that good, and so the company kind of had to cut a lot of people after that. But I knew that I was going to come back here and teach anyway, but that was one of the reasons why I joined the Army, was to go out and see the world. And I spent some 12 years in the Army in Europe, as well as another 3 years or so working in Europe with that Danish company. So when I came back home after the last job, I started using my GI Bill. I already had a bachelor's in history from the University of Maryland, University College in Heidelberg, Germany. And so the next thing I sought was a master's degree in history from the University of Kearney in Nebraska. I followed that with a master's degree in secondary education from Young Harris. Shortly after that, I began my doctoral program at Liberty University, and right now I'm writing my dissertation, which is the last thing I need to do to complete that.
Impressive resume. Well, what are some of your hobbies that you do outside of teaching?
Some of my hobbies. Right now, being in my dissertation phase, it kind of limits my hobby time, but I do like to fish for trout, and I paint science fiction and fantasy miniatures, and I build 1/48 scale military models.
Yeah, I know you have a lot of those paraded around your class.
Yes.
What about your family? Like, who are they?
My family. My wife Sylvia, she is from Croatia. I met her in Germany. I met her at a party in Friedberg, Germany, and she was speaking German with some of her friends. She did not realize that I spoke German, and she said, "Oh, that's the man for me." And I turned around and started talking to her in German, and they all fell over. And so that's how that started. And then I have 3 children. I have a daughter, Amy. The next oldest is Kenneth, and my youngest is Julian, and they were all 3 born in Germany.
What are they like, doing?
Okay. My daughter works in Atlanta. My son Kenneth, he is a second lieutenant in the Army, and he will be going to armor school training in December. He's about to get married to his high school sweetheart, Zan Danton. And then I have my youngest son, Julian, He is going to college at Tennessee Wesleyan, where he plays soccer.
Nice. Well, what is, this question is more personal, but what does studying or learning history mean to you personally? And how much do you think that means to, or how important do you think that is to the modern day?
The modern day. I think we could find a lot of lessons in history. There's an old saying that history repeats itself, but that's kind of not true. History may rhyme or echo. It's never exactly the same, but we still can learn a lot of lessons from drawing the causes and effects of different events and looking at them and applying them in how we seek solutions for future problems.
Very thoughtful, very insightful. What does it mean? What does it mean to you personally? Like,
personally, well, because I have lived a good bit of history, being in the Army, I feel a great connection to a lot of events, especially within Europe, outside of the United States, and that's very important to me because I had thought, well, I would teach U.S. history, but I don't think that you can really teach U.S. history without having a good understanding of world history and especially European history, because that's where a large amount of our foundational blocks come from. Yeah.
Well, you've mentioned that you've been in the military and you did a lot of jobs there, but what made you decide to, like, in the end game, be a teacher?
Well, that was kind of my goal to begin with when I joined the Army, was to go to Europe and see a lot of stuff, because I think it lends a lot of credibility to a teacher when they've been places and seen things and can impart the details on a different level than just having read about something.
Yeah. All right. So what made you want to do AP over like regular history or regular?
AP history over regular history. We have a sizable gifted population in our school, and although AP is not specifically for gifted students, that is a huge slice of them, but those students and students who are motivated deserve a challenge. And AP is definitely challenging, or it should be. Yeah. It should be challenging. It should encourage students to think, and I think that is where we can improve our school, is by challenging students to think and not just receive information, but be able to talk about information, things that they have learned.
All right, I understand that. But that leads me into some questions regarding your teacher style, or your teaching style, and why do you put more emphasis on it being like the student learns themselves over you lecturing? Right.
Well, it's like anything that you do in life, someone else can't do it for you. In the AP history classes, you take on the role of being a historian. You must read, you must assimilate information, and you must formulate your own arguments. I can't do that for you. You have to do that yourself. Now, one of the things that I do is called a flipped classroom, where you have to do things outside and then you come back to class and you're able to talk about them, or to have an assessment on what you know. Now, some of those assessments are formal assessments and some of them are informal assessments. The informal assessments would be like our class discussions, where we would talk about different possible answers to the short answer questions, or the long essay questions, or the document-based questions.
All right. Do you think that this specific teaching style will let students like absorb the material like better, or do you think that a like lecture based would be better?
Well, current popular educational thought wants to reduce lecture to a minimum. And if you noticed in my class, very rarely did I just tell you a lot of things. I might tell you a few stories, but I'd rather hear the story from you. If I tell you a story, and you receive it, that's passive. But if you read something and then I ask you some questions, or you have to write a response, that's active. If you watch a video, that is passive. If you watch a video and answer the questions that accompany the video, that is active. And that's what you want. That's how you remember things. It's just like any sport that you do. You practice, you have drills, and then you apply them on the field or on the court. And you're not going to be able to do well if someone else is doing that for you. I can tell you how to run a play in football or basketball, but until you go through that yourself, you're not going to be able to see actually what you can do. So that kind of activity is not something that students are used to. That being that active in the class for 90 minutes is a huge challenge. And then take that outside of the classroom where you've got to read or do exercises before you even come back is a huge challenge for students who've never had that before. And that's kind of the mindset that we're trying to change here, that you need to do work, and then you need to show how you can express your own command of the material.
All right. Heading back to the flipped classroom teaching thing, do you think that the work that you give your students is fair, or do you think it's like unfair?
I think it is tough. I think it is tough. Comparatively with other schools that I've talked with, I think we're right on target. Now, we have a special program here. There are not many like it where we're combining two courses over a year long. They're called skinny classes. And it's not difficult to do this because the material is so related, being that one is world history and one is European history. But there are very few programs like this. I just found one down near Athens the other day that they're doing the same thing, and then I had heard a friend talking about their school is about to approach it the same way by offering both AP Europe and World at the same time. In some ways, it's ironic. It's actually reducing the workload on the students because a lot of the material, as you know, was not redundant, but a little bit more of a repetition, but you looked at things closer. You may have gotten a good look at it in World, but when you looked at something that happened in world history that was European based, you got a lot more details in the Europe focused coursework.
So you would say that taking both classes all year would help in the long run with the AP exam, or?
I think that it helped us greatly. It was a challenge to put it together. We had to adapt as things happened throughout the year, because I didn't really have a good feeling for exactly how we would schedule things. But I think that we got a good handle on it after about the third unit. I think we had a good handle and a system down, and I think that has translated into this year very well, because it's a lot smoother than we went last year.
Yeah. That leads me into my next question, though. I mean, it's very early into the class, obviously. I know you're probably not past, Unit 4 on anything?
Yeah, we're at Unit 4 right now in World.
But how would you think that the new batch of students compares to the last year's guinea pig group?
Well, I think that this year's group of students is perhaps taking it a little bit more seriously. The way that they are addressing the material, and the way that they're performing on some of the earlier assessments shows me that they are putting a little bit more effort into it. And that's probably because of several things. One, people said, hey, that's a hard class, you're gonna have to do stuff. But also, we had a great amount of success. So some students were saying, oh, it's too much work, but other students were saying, well, look, if you do what you're gonna need to do, then you will, you'll do well on the tests.
All right. I already noticed you have the paper out, but how would you rate last year's AP class? Was it your first, right?
Well, this is my first AP World and AP Europe. Right. Yeah.
How would you rate last year's AP class on like a scale of 1 through 10 based off like the passing ratio, AP scores, and just overall work?
I think we really just knocked it out of the park. I may be an 8 or a 9, certainly not a 10, but I think it was surprising for the students. I wasn't surprised at the performance because the grading system that I used and how I broke everything down let me know basically who was going to do what on the test. How I was able to predict all of the scores, and for a first year course like that, people are going to say, well, don't expect your results to be all that great. You're just trying to figure it out. But it's not really me figuring it out. It's the students figuring it out. And in talking with my predecessor who had taught World and who's also an AP grader, Rodney Thurman, he was a little skeptical at first as far as a couple of the methodologies that we were using when we implemented an AI thing called Class Companion. And he would tell you, I just don't see that how that's going to work and if it's going to grade it on target like it should be. But we sat down together and graded papers manually and used the AI program. And he came away saying, before we even took the test, that he really wished he had had this tool back then. And one of the reasons is because the students in those classes, in my classes, were able to address more SAQs, the short answer questions, the long essay questions, and the document-based questions than he had been able to do before. We were able to do so many of the document-based questions and a lot of the long essay questions that generally take about an hour to grade one. So that means in reality over a semester you might get 3 or 4 graded in return. If you're talking about the number of students that I had I had 38 take the test for World. That would be 38 hours. A normal work week is 40 hours. Yeah. So when would that take place? So the question we're answering is how is this effective? It's effective in the fact that kids are able to address the material quicker, get feedback upon it so fast, and have multiple chances to correct it instead of waiting for days for me to hand something back to them. It's an immediate process. Now, how is it ineffective?
That was one of my questions.
Yes, I anticipated that for sure.
Yeah.
How is it ineffective? Well, the whole AI boom is something that we can't avoid. The program on occasion would give a message, some feedback that was in error. However, the program also provided a chance to provide a rebuttal on the answers. So if you knew for a fact, hey, I answered this, here it is, and here's why I think this is my answer, you could do that, and what would happen? I would look at it and give you the point on it. That's a learning process in itself because you're able to defend your position, and as you know, that those long essay questions and the document-based questions were to create historically defensible answers. And if you had read the material and done the work, what's the real answer? The real answer is, here it is. I can show you where it is. Here's my source. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, heading back to the AP scores, I noticed you have the sheet. Can you list off what my class did?
Okay, so for the I don't have the score broken down for the Europe class, but I'll talk about it as well. I have it here for the world class, and one of the reasons is because of the storm. They don't provide a breakdown the same when you do a written test versus an electronic test. And you guys were the first class that was supposed to be all digital in World and Europe. Okay, unfortunately, we had a storm. You were supposed to do Europe first, and that kind of threw a monkey wrench into the works, which I thought was going to work against us, because if you did the Europe test first, you would be warmed up, kind of know what to expect, and then you do the world test, which is a broader scope. Unfortunately, the storm pushed the AP Euro test to the end, and it had to be written. So you got the bigger, broader spectrum with the AP World test first. I will say this: students who did not seem to think that they were going to do well came in immediately after the test and said, "We killed it. We just killed it. That was so easy." And so that was a good thing. And then the Europe test, of course, we had to wait and have a written test. That was probably a little more challenging. Yeah. I don't want to say that it reduced the score a little bit, but I will tell you this. I predicted for both classes that you'd get a 76% on both. That 76% people of the students would make a 3 or better. That's what I predicted. For Europe, we hit 75. For World, we had 84.2%. Now, there's a lot more to those scores, and I can't really go into the Europe one, but I can go into the World one. And we can look at, you can make a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 on the AP history tests. We had 38 students take the world. No student made a 1. 6 students made a 6. I'm sorry, 6 students made a 2. That means 32 students made a 3 or better.
Which is passing.
Which is passing. Now, there's a little caveat to that. Let's talk about that. 19 students, that's half the students, made 4s. And then we had 4 who made a 5. So 23 students made a 4 or a 5. And that puts you at 9 that made a 3. One of the things about the AP history exams, and I'm pretty sure this is across the board, you need a 4 to get college credit. At least I know at Kennesaw and North Georgia, they want you to have a 4 to get the credit. My colleague, Rodney Thurman, was so excited when he saw this, because in his mind, he always wanted to try to get as many to get 3s. And you got to understand too that I had twice as many students as he's ever had. So when we had half the students get 4s, he was ecstatic. He couldn't believe it. That's a huge improvement, because we want the students to get the college credit. That is what we're after. So to push them to get these scores is imperative, because you'd think that you're trying to do this to get ahead, and you certainly are. There's a $97 fee. Maybe it's a little higher this year for an AP class. That's what it was last year, $97. You certainly don't want to waste $97.
Yeah.
But you certainly also want to understand that it costs you $1,000 or so maybe for a college class. So that's a good deal. So not wasting time and pushing yourself in the direction of success is where you want to go. And for us to get this kind of score is huge. And let me put this in a little perspective for you. The number of 4s we had was 50%. The Georgia average was 31.6% for a school. The global average was 32.2%.
Yeah, so we blew them out of the water.
So, yes.
Yeah.
And there's a variety of ways to look at these scores and all of the objectives that you guys had to do on your SAQs and your DBQs. All that is all broken down. And in almost every category, we really killed it. The students just did fantastic. And there's 2 different kinds of knowledge that are tested on this. There is your rote knowledge, and rote knowledge is just facts. That's what you're accustomed to getting in a history class, just facts. It happened at this time and this place and these people. Certainly, we do a lot of that with the multiple choice questions. But the short answer questions, the long answer questions, and the document questions, they make you have to think and assemble knowledge and make an argument, which is a totally different thing than just the rote knowledge. But I will say this, I've heard AP teachers say, well, you kind of get what you get when you take the multiple choice thing, because there's just so much. I will say this, y'all killed it. The class average was 76. 76%. In reality, you only need somewhere around 55 to 60% to pass that portion of the test. So really, y'all killed it all the way through.
Yeah.
There's not one element of the AP test that y'all did not excel in. It's just a fact.
Is there any students that you would like to shout out for their efforts?
Oh yeah. Dylan Pospisil, he is a great example of, Dylan had taken he'd taken human geography the year before, and he did not do as well as he wanted. He thought he tried to do stuff, but that year changed his mindset on what he needed to do. So he didn't really take no for an answer on an AP course. He was like, no, this is where I want to be. I want to do something hard. And so he comes back, and he really breaks it down all year long. And he comes back and he kills it. He just kills it. There were quite a few examples. There's a student who works 8 hours a day, and took my classes. He killed it. He did such a fantastic job on it, which is an interesting point of view when you think that some people would say, well, that's a lot of work. You think that's too much work? And here's a kid that comes in and works a full-time job.
Yeah.
And who knows how many hours a week he's really working. I know that he's working every day during the week and probably on the weekends as well. As a testament to the power of the AI program that we used, down toward the end, it was crunch time, wasn't it? And we got through everything, but we were moving toward the end. The interesting thing about that is, by that time, you guys already knew what you needed to do. You didn't even need to be told what to do. You just, we're moving into this unit. We're going to do this, and this. Well, at the end, we had about a week to go, and the student said, hey, I had said, I'm not going to give you a lot of those long answer questions. We're done. And he said, well, could you put some in anyway? And so I said, if you're sure, I'll put them in for you, and you can do them. And then after we got the scores back, he sent me an email that said, thanks for pushing me and putting those extra questions in for me when I asked, because the feedback that he got from them really helped him. He valued that. And I think that's an interesting point, because it's, do you value the feedback, or can you not handle criticism? Because it's coming from a machine, it should be kind of easier to take, because it's not personal. Some people take it personally.
Yep, that was one of the biggest complaints from last year's class, because I went and asked a bunch of people, and class companion was the biggest focal point of.
Yeah, but you get the feedback. Now, are you used to, I can turn this in, and then it'll be days before I can, if I even see it again, or, I did this, it took me 10 minutes to do this, and then there's my feedback within seconds. Am I going to take that score, or am I going to fix it? And how do I fix it? And that's one of the key things in the class is it drives you to research your answers. And that's what historians do, is they research, and that's what you had to do in that.
All right. Is there any other students, or?
Well, there's you, of course. You knew that. You did a fantastic job. Your whole mindset changed. That's one of the things that we've talked about. Your whole mindset had changed on, what's important. How do I need to focus on things? That was huge for you. I mean, you could just tell that it's made a difference in your life. Lillian C. did a fantastic job, and she missed a week for an FFA competition, but she still came back with very high scores. Harper Davenport did a great job. He was just going, and he had a change in mindset where he had taken AP Human Geography and he did really well in it, but Harper didn't really challenge himself at that time. But this last year when he did that, he was really on top of things. But there were quite a few. Evelyn Tessero, she really tried very, very hard, and she did well. I think pretty much anyone who stuck it out to the end deserves that kind of recognition, because one, that was not an easy course.
I agree.
It's not an easy course, but people may complain coming out of it, but the scores, and you talk to the kids who got a 3 or better, how much more do they know about history now than they knew before? And it's not just about the history thing, it's the ability to motivate themselves to do things, it's the ability to research, it's the ability to push themselves, because not only did this class prepare them for those things, it helped prepare them for the real world of college, where the teachers may or may not care how much time that you didn't put into it, because you'll just get the grade that you deserve immediately, and they're not prompting you to get things done.
No, I agree. All right, if we're going to talk about the highlights, we also got to talk about the lowlights. What do you have to say regarding people who either dropped out of the class either last year or even this year, or the people who opted out of the AP test?
Opted out of the AP test.
Or just dropped out of the class completely.
Dropped out of the class.
Yeah.
Well, this is a 2-semester class, because it's really 2 classes side by side all year long. Some students knew going in that it was going to be a challenge for them, and whether they had the intestinal fortitude to push it out is one thing. Now, we didn't have that many who dropped from first to second semester, but we did have several that decided not to take the test in the end. But it wasn't really that many, maybe 4 that didn't take the test in the end. Frankly, you have to understand that even though we would like a lot of people to take these courses, unless you're going to put the work in,
It's a waste of time.
is that your focus? Is this really something that you want to do? Is there some other place? Whatever it is that you want to do is fine, but put the work into it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
All right. Well, I went and asked previous students from my class some questions they would have. They had nothing positive. Harper had one question though, and he asked, "Why is your class so hard?"
Why is my class so hard?
That was the only question that I could put on here, so.
I guess maybe one of the questions is, if my class is hard, are you thinking about why are your other classes so easy?
I will say that taking your class has helped me tremendously with writing. Like, writing an essay now ain't really that hard.
Oh, yes, and that is a huge point, because
I think that's one of the biggest things I picked up was like learning how to like write properly and more efficiently.
Because people do not realize that social studies, history is a writing field. It is a writing field. It may be hard because have things been hard in other classes for you where you're challenged for those skills? Because where are you learning writing skills before that? if you're writing those, writing in other classes, outside of literature and English classes, is at a minimum, right? Certainly, learning to write a thesis last year was a challenge.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know why that is. You've had it before. It's not really any difference in your English classes, is it? Or were you taking it seriously before?
I think one of the biggest things about the thesis is going from like more broad to trying to like narrow it down to a more specific.
Right. Because you're asked to make an argument, you're developing an argument, and you've got to support it with 2 or 3 basic premises. And then what do you have to do? You have to give specific pieces of evidence to support those. How is your speaking now compared to before you took my class? Because you're writing and your thinking should have been improved along with.
I completely agree.
Do you feel that you're much more mature in how you approach problems?
Oh yeah, I used to hate essay writing, but like now it's easy. I mean, one of my greatest feats I had in your class was writing a 2,000 word DBQ in like that 1 hour. And the laws of life we're having to write, I mean, I did that in like 30 minutes now. It's like, it's super easy.
It's super easy. And I'll tell you, you know, Mr. Wingo, who taught AP Calc here, there was a lot of work in his classes, and my sons took his class, for sure. And I know for a fact that they would work 90 minutes during the day. They'd be working throughout in other classes whenever they had some downtime, and then they had 3 hours of homework at night. Dominic McAuliffe, who is an engineering student at Kennesaw State, or Kennesaw University now, he showed me a diagram of the classes that he was able to clap out of or get credit for because of all the hard work he did in Wingo's class. He told me, he said, you know, for Calculus 2 and Calculus 3, he didn't even have to study because in college, because he had done so much stuff here, and I don't remember what the percentage of students that made 3s, but it was really high in that class. So we didn't have quite that much work. We had a pretty good amount, but it wasn't that much work. So I tried to look at that and say, he got those results. How can we do that better with less? Okay. On the other hand, I tried to look at maybe an AP US history course and what our scores are in that, and have been in the past. How much work was put into that? Could I get somewhere in the middle? And I think we hit that. Yeah. It was painful. It was painful, but now look like you just said. Where are you?
A lot better than from where before. Well, what would you want to tell kids who are looking into taking your class, or just kids that are looking into taking your class? I mean, do you have any advice, warnings, or just general information before they?
I would take my English classes, my literature classes where I'm writing very seriously, because you need to know that I'm not just going to tell you facts. Yeah. You're going to have to tell me things. You're going to have to tell me ideas. You're going to have to make arguments and defend them. And you can only really do that effectively if you can write a thesis. And in the end, you know, some of those, Did you notice that maybe some of your essays got shorter towards the end, but they still hit because your ideas became more concise? You were able to be more focused in how you communicated.
Explain more and less.
Yes, certainly.
All right. Is there any warnings?
Need to read. Need to read.
Well, do you think your current class will do better than my class?
I don't know. I think they have the pure talent to do it. I think they may be one step ahead because they already knew coming in it was not going to be a joke. Oh, yeah. And they've seemingly been a little bit more on top of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. Well, you have any closing statements or any other information you'd like to give us?
I think that's it.
I think that's it.
All right. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Withrow.
Certainly.